Waiters, what dating disasters have you witnessed? I was a waiter at a very famous, upscale restaurant and a gentleman approached the maitre requesting someone take pictures of him proposing to his girlfriend. Since I was the closest asshole to the maitre, I was tasked with performing this duty. After stalking the table for a solid hour, the moment was inevitably approaching. I set up at an angle she couldn't see me, and when he busted out the ring I started taking as many pictures as I could. Anyone who has tried to capture a once-in-a-lifetime moment on camera knows that you're not really watching what's going on, you're just trying to frame the moment. After about 20-30 pictures I slowly realized that she was declining the proposal and the scene was quickly degenerating into a 5-alarm dumpster fire. However, I was far enough away that I couldn't hear what was being said and couldn't be sure of what was transpiring, so I continued taking pictures just in case. Finally I stepped back and watched the scene unfold in reality as she stormed out of the restaurant in embarrassment and he scrambled to pay the bill and chase after her. He'd requested that I use my phone and send the best pictures to him. Needless to say, he never approached us for the pictures, and I have about 100 plus pictures of a wedding proposal gone wrong somewhere deep in my iCloud photo bank. What a sad ending to a first date. Classic schmoss B. I worked at a bar in a hotel for 5 years. I had a table come down from their hotel room and sit at one of my pub tables for dinner. From the moment they sat down, you could tell the wife was furious about something. She was unbelievably pleasant toward me, but did not say a single word to the man at the table. I get their drinks, and then their orders. He ordered steak and she ordered the sauciest pasta dish we had on the menu. About 20 minutes later, the wife still hadn't said a word to the man. Since they sat down, their food was done and my food runner set it on the table. Right as I was about to walk over to see if they needed anything else, I saw the woman stand up, say "Go frick yourself, John," as she picked up the plate of pasta and dumped it all over his head and down into his lap. Then she very calmly walked out of the bar and back up to her hotel room. I spent a few minutes helping the man clean up and got my manager to come handle the situation from there, as it was way above my pay grade at that point. Later in the night, the woman came back to the bar without the man and we talked for a while. Turns out he admitted to cheating on her right before their dinner reservation. I never saw either of them again. Why go out for dinner after admitting to cheating? Even if I was hungry, I would want to have a discussion about that. At least admit to the cheating after dinner. This was probably about 4 years ago, in a joint called the Esquire Tavern on the River Walk. We had a street entrance as well as a river entrance, but from the river you had to walk up a really narrow metal staircase to our balcony. It barely had enough room for 5 small tables, including one that was tucked in a corner that made it hard to see from below. Anyways, it was a slow summer lunch, so I was doubling as a hostess, and this guy comes up from the river entrance and asks for a spot on the patio, specifically the hidden cramped one. "No problem, sir," I say, and I get him set up. We chat for a bit, I take his order, bring it out, and go about my business, which was to passively watch him through the window, because he was my only table and I wanted to keep an eye on him. I started to notice him suddenly ducking his head, as if he's trying not to be seen from the river level by someone. I remember pointing it out to another co-worker, who was just as curious as I was. Then we heard a woman scream, "There you are, Marcus, you piece of crap." I could hear the staircase shuddering as someone was clearly stomping their way up it, and my coworker astutely dipped out to find the manager. The lady started laying into this dude, and all I could make out was something about ditching her, all the while he's just ignoring her and calmly eating his buffalo burger, lol, which made her snap. She slapped the crap out of this dude, telling him to fricking acknowledge me, and he simply got up, walked around her, and came inside to sit at the bar. She then sits down and starts eating this poor man's meal like nothing is wrong. By this point though, the manager is here, and he goes outside and starts trying to kick her off the premises, while I go talk to Marcus and figure out what's what. The TL doctor is that the woman was his wife, and they had come downtown for lunch. She had a nasty habit of getting super fricked up and belligerent, which always ended up ruining their plans, including a wedding reception a few months prior. She refused to go get help, insisting that she'd keep her drinking to a minimum, and this was their first vacation since that incident. They had stopped at a brunch place around the corner and she proceeded to have 4 old fashions back to back. When she was ordering her 4th drink, he told her that she was already out of control and that if she kept drinking he was going to close the tap and go eat lunch somewhere else and that he'd meet her back at the hotel. She told him he was chicken crap and that he wasn't going anywhere. So he got up, paid their bill, and walked out. I guess she thought he was putting up a front and was actually waiting outside for her, then realized he wasn't. She started running up and down the river looking for him. He just wanted to finish his burger in peace before dealing with her craziness. In the end, we had her ejected from the premises and my manager made him another burger on the house. A year or so later, we saw him at the bar with a different woman. He divorced his wife and couldn't look happier. Usually I'm an advocate for couples trying to make it work. But good on you, Buffalo Burger guy. You deserved every bite of that thing. If he'd spoken to her about her drinking before, that's a good sign he was invested enough to have tried. But it only works if both sides want to try. Guy 1 and GF are fondling each other at my bar. Guy 2 joins them at the bar and they quickly separate and behave. The 3 go off into the casino, but stop back for drinks a few times. Early AM Guy 2 does a shot and walks away. I can tell he isn't happy. He comes back and says he has a couple of hours to kill before his plane leaves. We get to chatting and he tells me he just broke up with his GF as suspects she snuck up to the room and mailed his best friend when he couldn't find either of them for an hour. I ask if it was Guy 1 and GF. He confirms it and I'll let him know he is making the right choice as they were making out at the bar before he came down. He thanks me for confirming, leaves a huge tip, and lets me know what is happening in case there is any confusion with the hotel. An hour or so later Guy 1 and GF are at the bar whispering and arguing. I casually ask if everything is okay. They say they are locked out of their room and can't find their friend who paid for the room. They tried to charge the bill to the room too, but my computer showed the room was empty. I told them Guy 2 had been in earlier but checked out and his flight was already in the air. Then I watched the meltdown. Guy 2 had paid for his BFF and GF to spend a week in Vegas with him. They cheated and got caught. He checked out and flew home, and they had nowhere to stay for the week and no money for even basic food. Their luggage had been packed and left in the baggage hold. They did everything they could to get out of paying for their drinks as they were hella expensive, left no tip, and didn't have a place to sleep or even change clothing at 5 AM. Must have been pretty satisfying to leave them there, fricking idiots. As Junior once said, "Bargord, they tried cheating the devil and they got caught." I used to bartend at a Yard House in the before times. Yard House is a corporate place that's basically a nicer sports bar with a ton of drink on tap with stupid, giant novelty glasses. I had a couple at the bar during happy hour drinking from one of the big glasses and they ordered some onion rings that were half price. He jokingly proposed with an onion ring and she started laughing and jokingly said yes. Then he busted out an actual ring. She wasn't laughing anymore. I asked my wife to marry me. She didn't say no or yes. She just brushed it off. A few weeks later, out of the blue she jokingly says, "I'll marry you. I need insurance. My job doesn't offer it." I didn't care what the reason was and didn't really believe the insurance reason. Just happy she would marry me. As time went by, this started to eat at me, and about a year and a half later, she again out of the blue says, "You know I was joking about the insurance. I wanted to say yes the first time, but you caught me off guard, and I was embarrassed. The insurance thing was a way for me to bring it up again and get you to ask me again. We've been together 13 years, and she still has good insurance." Haha, that's awesome. Congrats on 13 years. This happened when I was around 18 or so. I'm mostly Native American. This is an important factor to the story. A guy and his date sat in my section and he immediately asked to speak to my manager. This was before I even took their drink order, so I was perplexed, but went and grabbed him right away. The dude then asked my manager for a nice white server instead, right in front of me, while giving me a rather disgusted scowl. His date was so horrified she stood up and said, "Oh hell no. That racist crap don't work with me, honey. You can sit me at the bar, sweetheart, this date is over." The manager made the man leave and calmed his date's food. She left the manager $100 tip for me with a note that said, "You are beautiful and worthy of respect. Always remember that." Her date was a disaster, but she made my night. I'm sorry you had to deal with him, but that lady's my hero. Your manager sounds cool too. The crazy part is my manager was black. Lol, so not sure how he thought that was going to go, haha. I used to work at a bar where 70% of the customers were on Tinder dates. There was a line of 2-person booths along the wall. When you first walk in, there were 2 dudes sitting by themselves in 2 different booths. Both of them were facing the door. One was in the first booth, one was in the last booth. This girl comes in and walks up to the first booth, says hi to the guy, and sits down. They are chatting for about 5 minutes when the other guy who is sitting by himself comes up to her and says, "Hey, I'm so and so, aren't you so and so?" They all talk for like 30 seconds, and she gets up and goes and sits with the other guy at the last booth. Eventually a different girl shows up for a date with the guy at the first booth. I don't know exactly what happened, but I almost died watching it unfold. She was definitely embarrassed. Oh man, I'm really bad at remembering faces. Walking into a restaurant for a first or second date and not being able to remember what the person looks like is such a nightmare. I'm married now, so I'm saved from the hell that is dating. Out of the frying pan. Okay, here's a great story that I've been wanting to share. I work at a small bakery in my town. I'm general kitchen staff and not a waiter, but I was there when this all went down. It was around 2 in the afternoon. The day had been normal, but suddenly I saw the retail staff in a huddle and took my first opportunity to go see what was happening. Apparently a couple had come in on this summer day, ordered 2 bowls of soup and sat down. The girl that took their order went to the back and prepared their soup for them, then brought it back out. In the time it took for her to get the soup, the woman had taken off her flip-flop, put her leg across the table, and the guy was going to town sucking on this lady's toes in the middle of the restaurant. The waitress didn't notice until she went to place the soup on the table. She stood there in shock, and the couple was oblivious to her presence. This guy's going all in, and the lady is starting to moan by the time they realize their soup is ready. The waitress was in complete shock for the rest of her shift, and that couple is no longer allowed on the premises. This place has even more weird stories, from someone forcing open the back door to ask for a hamburger to a complete stranger coming out of the basement and acting like he's supposed to be there. Not to mention the time I watched a bird fly out of a hole in the ceiling. Kentucky can be a weird place. I was about to ask Florida, but then you said Kentucky. Kentucky is the Florida of the Midwest. I used to work as a hostess at a thank deity it's the weekend already. Guy makes a reservation at the most booked table. It's by the window, all romantic etc. Also super visible from any other part of the restaurant. Comes in, all dressed up, and with a suitcase. Strange, but okay. A few minutes later, his date arrives. They laugh, flirt. We actually thought it's an anniversary or he's going to propose or something the way it was going. Nope. Halfway through the evening she starts screaming at him. He broke up with her and actually packed her suitcase, then paid and left her there sobbing at the table alone. We got her a brownie on the house because just watching that we felt freaking awful. This is the worst day of your life. Take a brownie. I mean they were at the most romantic table at a TGIF. If that's the sign of a good night, she's had a lot of bad ones. I'm a waitress in my father's restaurant. It's not that big, but we are usually full during weekends. A lot of couple come here cause it's kinda chic for a French restaurant. Anyway, once there was a couple, early 30s. The dude arrived earlier than the girl, so either it was something like a date but the girl ordered everything. She chose all the dishes, the dessert and even the wine without even asking the guy what he would like to have. They both didn't talk, only said good evening. Weird for a date. But when I came at their table to serve the wine, they started to argue about their relationship. The dude was convinced that she cheated on him, and you know what? She admitted that and said very loud that he was bad in bed. At this moment any single cell in my body was cringing. They kept arguing for 10 minutes until I decided to stop them, cause they were almost yelling and so disturbing the roughly 15 people in the restaurant. The woman asked if she could have another bottle of wine, and she left within 5 minutes with the bottle. I felt so bad for this guy that I gifted him his whiskey coca. Jeez, poor guy. Sad in the moment, but he's better off without her. I, 22 meters at the time, was busboy at a 200-seat restaurant that was part of a sporting club. I'd been there for long enough to have a feel for the personalities of the customers. On this particular night, one of my tables was a first date. The girl was lovely, all smiles and very pleasant. The guy was sort of normal, seemed a bit quiet. He put off some fairly clear signals that he would prefer to be left alone though. That's okay, some prefer minimal service. What I did notice though was that the guy was talking to her quietly but forcefully and almost non-stop, sometimes gripping her arm firmly in a way that suggested that she wouldn't be able to pull away easily. I couldn't hear a word that was said, but the lady was looking more and more terrified all the time, like nearly about to wet herself terrified. A complete change from her pleasant nature when they had walked in. I told the waitress on the adjacent section that I wasn't sure about what was going on and asked if she wouldn't mind checking on the table to let me know her thoughts. Waitress went to the table, said a few quick words, and came back to me. Out of earshot, she said, "Yeah, I think we have to get her out of here." We let the manageress know what was going on. The guy had booked his table. Good. We had his name. Outside of the taxi rank, by some miracle, there was a female cabbie in the line. I ignored the protests of the other drivers. I hopped in and told the cabbie the situation and offered her $20 to wait around the back of the restaurant. I said, "Please don't wait for a destination, just drive. Something's really wrong with her date." The cabbie didn't need the $20. We had the front desk call the guy over the PA for an urgent call. This would delay him while they tried to figure what the call was and then realize in that he had actually won a meat tray they were raffled off at various intervals through the night. "Just wait here while we fetch it for you." As soon as creepy guy was out of sight, I asked his date if she needed to get out of here. She just trembled and nodded. Figuring that she probably wasn't in the mood to trust a male at that point, my waitress friend escorted her to the kitchen and out to the waiting cab where she slipped away quick as you please. The guy came back to an empty table and staff seeming to be oblivious to where his lady friend had gone. We didn't get much of the story other than that the lady was set up on a blind date by a mutual friend who told her that this guy was okay. Way to go team. Good on all of you for intervening.